to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Born and unborn.
Sure. I just want to make sure, we've changed the setup in here. I know they are looking for the clock and it's over there now, but in looking, we tried to get some, so maybe you can hear us a little bit better out there.
Not
Some
without
things
the
from
mic.
Speakers as to where they're at and how they're working and to get in there. And everything will be shown from here a little bit different.
Where are the microphones?
They're down here. We don't want, you can't hear them up there at the bounce.
I'm sorry.
Are you picking things up or not?
Well, she'll just pick it up. One off the speaker behind you. It's going out the speaker right behind you.
Okay. Thank you.
And we've been able to hear every one of them that we put on the other camera.
So, just for your information, we do have a couple of speakers out there, loudspeakers for those in the back. If you can't hear what's being said, please raise your hand and give us a shout out and we'll try and speak louder for you.
Nothing in here.
Okay?
Oh.
Okay, roll call been taken? We would now entertain a motion for the minutes of the April 24th, 2018 regular meeting and the May 1st, 2018 budget review meeting. Have a motion support, are there any additions or corrections to that meeting, either of those meetings? Hearing none, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed, same sign, the motion is carried. Number one, set a hearing for Tuesday, June 12th, 2018 at 6 p.m. to consider a special assessment rule for the unpaid charges for noxious weed cutting, sidewalk replacement, and utility billing charges for 2017. Have motion support, are there any additions or comments or questions? Hearing none, those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign, that motion is carried. Number two is public hearing to review the proposed fiscal year 2019 annual city budget and related property tax millage rates. What's that?
And that is now, right?
That is now, yes. So, you gonna lead this? Or?
This is, again, part of the process as we, for a large part of the group here in their first year of doing this, as we looked at the millage rates and everything from last year, and the way the budget has set itself up, that we are not going to increase or make any moves. We're going to go ahead and keep things where they're at for a year and make sure and see where we're at. So none of the rates at this point in time will change. So. There.
May or may not be good news.
Exactly, we'll see at the end.
Yeah.
That's much more
That's all.
Well, that may come too.
Yeah. Okay. So, we'll open a public hearing. Anybody from the public? On the budget. Yeah, this is
On the budget.
this is strictly for the budget, this one. So anybody from the public like to come and comment? Please come to the podium, state your name and address, address the commission. Not many takers in this.
Guess we did it right first time.
Yeah. Well, we will find out.
Yes.
We have a motion to close.
Support.
Support. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. The hearing is closed. Okay. So item 3 is public hearing to discuss the proposed draft medical marijuana ordinances. And Eric?
Yeah, we'll do a quick run through for you to kind of, because we've done a lot since we had the planning commission meeting and things, so we'll just do a quick synopsis and then get on to the public's comments. This is all new for me too, so this is kind of weird not sitting over there. I've been doing presentations over there for hours. This is very different. All right. All right. In June of 2017, the City Commission reviewed the September 2016 Medical Marijuana Facilities Act, PA 281, which is providing for the commercial business for the medical marijuana. This is all medical marijuana. It's nothing that the city managers talked about what's happening in November. that's for recreational, or the decriminalization of marijuana really is what that's about. Also passed as part of the legislation is PA 282, which is tracking of the medical marijuana. Currently, we don't know from seed, once it's grown, where it's going. This is set up like a system, so you know from seed to disposal of the product, where it's going, and to keep track of it. So that's the other portion of it. And the last portion of it was to amend the 2008 Act, which was voted on by the state of Michigan and the voters. That's why we have what we have today. It recognizes medical infused products and medibles, basically, and prohibits butane resin extraction as a refining process in residential areas. If you don't know much about that, basically, they heat this stuff up to extract the oils from it to use for the different products that they use for arthritis and so on. But that can be dangerous, explosive. So obviously it's not a great idea to have that kind of stuff happening in a residential area. And that's what's happening currently underneath the system we have right now. City Commission and staff felt there were some positive merits to the new act, allowing access to facilities for inspections, outlawing the butane extraction in residential areas, and with competition, hopefully would lower the caregiver's growing product in residential homes. Like I said, our thought was when this came out, get the stuff out of the residential areas, get it into a commercial facility that we can keep an eye on it. Right now we cannot get into these grow areas or to meet with these people without probable cause. That's what we got down here. The Caregiver Patient System 2008 has brought medical marijuana to the whole state of Michigan, including Gratiot County. Growing dispensing is mainly conducted out of residential areas. There are no avenues to inspect these units. Probable cause, that means they may have criminal activities. The act did not account for commercial distribution of the medical marijuana. That just didn't happen here in Michigan either. The state of Maine is dealing with that exact same situation right now. Based on the December 22nd, 2016 Medical Marijuana Act statistical report with program information and financial data, there were a total of 100, and I checked to see if there was anything updated, but this is the most current. There were 174 caregivers, legal growers of marijuana in Gratiot County, and 972 legal patients carrying cards that can use the product. We know that more people are growing and more people are using than those numbers show. There's not, underneath this system, the legal system that's been provided. In June 2017, the City Commission asked if the Planning Commission would be willing to assist in developing and working through a process to develop an ordinance provided under the new law. Planning Commission reviewed a presentation on the new law and marijuana ordinances, information from Walled Lake, Mount Pleasant, and Weberville. And Mount Pleasant really is in the same boat we are right now. They kind of started ahead of us. We went ahead of them for a while. And we're all in the same place. It's not an easy situation right now for anybody in the state of Michigan. We're all fighting the same kind of issues and how to best figure them out for our communities. September 2017, the Planning Commission reviewed the state and local regulation of marijuana, medical marijuana by the Municipal League, and a model ordinance provided by Principal Education Solutions, and we also looked at a Bangor Township license application to get a feel for the overall process. October 2017, Planning Commission reviewed medical marijuana ordinance from Kalamazoo. We heard a presentation, the gentleman who's the attorney for the city of Kalamazoo is giving a presentation for the MML up in Mount Pleasant that a few of us went up to from the Planning Commission and city commissioners that went up. Also, the attorney from Kalamazoo has done other talks across the state about this. So he's pretty well known and done a lot of work with this, so we looked at that ordinance also. The first draft was reviewed in November of 2017. In December 2017, the ordinance comparisons, where facilities could locate, and we'll be talking in a second, and number and setbacks. The city manager mentioned that in the planning session of some things that we tweaked on that in that area there from December 2017. And also that same meeting, the Gratiot County Substance Abuse Coalition provided a letter and comments against the ordinance. January 18, Paul Homenick spoke to the Planning Commission about the LARA regulation and process. That's the government organization of the state of Michigan that's reviewing all these applications, or is reviewing these applications. He serves on the Licensing Board's Safety Compliance Facility Work Group with the state of Michigan. The Planning Commission felt the draft was ready after the discussion with Paul. So we set a special hearing date, not a regular date for public hearing or a public planning commission meeting, because we just want to concentrate just on that particular item for March 12th at 5:30, which provided, by that point, it was in January, provided a lot of time to distribute the draft ordinance. March 5th, Planning Commission reviewed the possible recommendations for the City Commission for opting in, opting out, and regulating the possible facilities. On March 12th, the Planning Commission held the public hearing, and the recommendation was there was a decision to hold the recommendation to table until we got some extra feedback from the City Commission, which took us to the March 27th meeting with the City Commission. We discussed the Planning Commission's public hearing comments and staff recommendations to hopefully bridge some of the gap that we heard at that meeting. And also at that meeting, during the public comment section, this wasn't a formal public hearing for the marijuana ordinance, but we had many comments that were made during the public comment section, which we did take into account for our April 2nd Planning Commission meeting, because we made amendments to the draft ordinance that at that meeting, the Planning Commission decided, that we're going to recommend with these amendments to push it up to the City Commission for their review. And again, those amendments that the City Manager talked about were based on the public hearing comments on March 12th and the comments that were received from the City Commission on March 27th. City Commission reviewed the draft ordinance on April 10th, and public comments were again, we had quite a few comments on the April 10th, 2018 public comment section of the meeting. And then on an April 24th City Commission meeting, the City Commission decided to go ahead and hold the second public hearing meeting, which is the one that we're holding tonight. So we've had a lot of discussion, looked at a lot of different options, looked at a lot of different communities, and here are the major points of where the ordinance stands today as recommended on April 2nd from the Planning Commission. Facilities provided for. We provided zoning districts for all 5 facilities, and each of those districts, that's where they can locate. So secure transport can only be located in an office services, is what OS is. The B2s, your general commercial, which is like Northtown and just to the east of downtown, along the industrial area there. LI, limited industrial, and GI is general industrial. Dispensaries provisioning centers, same sort of thing. It would be only be able to locate in a B1 central business district, the B2, LI, and GI. Grow operations are strictly limited to the LI and GIs. Processors, same thing, LI, GI. Safety compliance, the OS, B1, B2, LI, and GI. They're labs. They just do testing of the potency of the product that gets tested. Each batch gets tested, which is currently not happening. So again, it's starting to move in a better direction than what we have that was voted on in 2008 by the voters of the state of Michigan. And then, with all the other comments we get from both sides, we looked at setbacks and what made sense to actually be able to provide locations for these facilities. If this community's going to have them, they got to have a place to put them. So we looked at 300-foot setbacks from R1 zoning districts, city parks, and K through 12 schools. As the city manager discussed, originally we had no limits on these, so after hearing comments, we put limits on all the grow, processors, secure transport, dispensaries, safety compliance to 2. Dispensary up to 3, the rest are 2. Also, we reinforced the odor control language, and the city will not issue a permit unless the permit holder holds a valid state license, as city manager mentioned from the Detroit's newspaper, and the process they have to go through the state, Michigan. They have a lot better system than we have to be able to look at backgrounds, financial information. So if the person can get past and get their license from the state of Michigan, all we're going to do is like review what they have there, ask them a couple more questions with our stuff, and provide them a space to be. That way we'll save some time on our end for staffing, and plus that if they don't pass the state of Michigan, which is the hardest step to get past obviously, then what's the point starting here and sending them up there? So if they can get past there, we have a less of a hurdle to jump than they do up there. This is to give you an idea of B1 and B2 zoning districts. The B1s are dark red, and B2s are the pinks. That is not necessarily where you can locate in those districts, but you still have to find a place that you can actually move into. You gotta have a landlord that's willing to rent, or a place you can buy. And plus, you can't be within 300 feet of a residential K through 12 and parks. This is the LI and GI districts in the community. Again, the same kind of things would come apart. Just because they're there doesn't mean that there's an actual place that person could locate, because of all the other reasons: finding a location, finding a landlord, finding property, and being within those distances from those other uses. This is a look at all 4 of those districts together. That's where they're located within the community. And we try to do our best to come up with something. This is not scientific or anything, this is how the ordinance is written, but just to give you a general idea, the light green is R1 districts, and the lighter green is R1A districts, and the hashed red are 300-foot buffer zones around there. Now, you can only locate in the districts that have been designated for those particular uses. So all the ones that aren't necessarily shaded, you can't, like the ones to the right, that's all R2. You can't locate in an R2. And there's big pieces up toward the north side of town that are R3. You can't locate in the R3s. So we try to give as best we could, give you an idea that it's not just it's everywhere. It's just there's limited spaces that you can do these things. So as you're going through and trying to create a zoning ordinance, if you're going to have things happen, then you have to have places for them to go. If you're not, as if the community decides not to do something, then you should just decide not to do it and just be done with it instead of try to zone it out. That's just not the way to do it from a zoning standpoint. So that's in a nutshell where we are today. And if you have any questions for me, then I'll sit down and move this out of the way. You can have public comment.
Okay. Thank you, Eric. Anybody have questions for Eric before we get started on anything else here? Okay. Thank you very much, Eric. Now, before we open up the public comment, I do want to fully disclose that I was approached recently. As many of you know, I own some property downtown, and I was approached by an out-of-town landlord interested in renting a property from me. I currently do have one location that is vacant. I told him because of my position with the city, I was not interested in renting to them because it would put me in a weird position here as far as having a personal interest in what might happen. They mentioned something about buying it. I said, you know, if they're gonna buy it, it's gotta be cash before this meeting tonight. I never heard anything back from them. So I don't know how interested this party really was, or this realtor, who his ultimate client was going to be. But I just wanted to let everybody know that I was approached recently with this, with the option of renting to somebody, and it didn't happen for the reasons that I just stated. So I just want everybody to know that up front, that I do not have any personal interest in this one financially. So that's my piece that I want to say for now. With that, any commissioners want to make any comments? Statements before we go on here with the public comments? All right. At this point, we'll open up the public comment. We're going to limit it to, I believe, to 5 minutes. Is that our? I believe that's what that is. So please stay within the 5-minute time limit. We'll try and time it from up here. I apologize for whatever inaccuracies we have with timing, but we'll do as best we can. First one, come to the podium, state your name and address the commission, please. So who would like to go first? Okay.
I'm just gonna distribute these packets really briefly at my meeting. Yeah, there's 2, so make sure everyone takes 2. Sorry that I killed a tree for that, but it's important information. So, good evening. My name is Kristen Tenza. I'm not a resident of Alma. I am here in representation of Oasis Wellness Centers and Wild Bill's Tobacco. We are located in Troy, Michigan. Medical marijuana is already here within this community and in many communities across the state. This happened when back in 2008, every single county in the state voted in favor of the Michigan Medical Marijuana Act. Today, we're not discussing whether the city wants to allow for medical marijuana because it is already here. We are discussing whether the city would like to regulate the medical marijuana market that currently exists within the jurisdiction. Medical marijuana home operations are already here within the city, and they are diminishing the values of properties and homes. By opting in to allow for high-grade commercial scale facilities, you have a chance to shoo these operations up and out of the basements and into the open, where they can be safely operated, regulated, and monitored. Now is the time to seize hold of the legislative intent of the Medical Marijuana Facilities Licensing Act, which is to utilize your power to provide a safe and regulated environment for patients to purchase their medicine by heavily vetting out operators and to allow market forces to drive home-growing operations out of the basements. The MMFLA takes a black market driven by unregulated basement operations and legitimizes it into a real and legal commercial market that will bring revenue to municipalities across the state for the established statute mandating a 3% excise tax on all provisioning centers. Beyond economic benefits, providing medical marijuana fills a need. Medical marijuana is healthcare that many of the people living in this state have chosen to receive, and it is a disservice to them to deny them of that right. I myself am a medical marijuana patient. I suffer from PTSD as a result of tragically watching my father die when I was 19 years old. Medical marijuana patients want to be seen and treated as real patients because we are. As a patient myself, I can personally tell you that many of the dispensing facilities I have frequented are not up to the standard that I would hold any medical care or treatment facility to. By opting in to allow for high-grade, regulated, commercial-scale facilities, you are creating a safe environment for your constituents to obtain their medicine, and even for neighboring communities who lack this. We strongly encourage the imposition of a well-thought-out merit-based selection system, similar to the City of Lansing's scoring system and rubric criterion. These are the packets you have before you. The City of Hazel Park's scoring process and factors for review, the Lapeer application policy and scoring matrix, the City of Flint's merit review process, or the City of Niles' request for proposal process. The aforementioned processes allow each municipality to sift through applicants based on the quality of information they are able to demonstrate in their application, as well as the type of character they possess as individuals and the ethical business practices they employ within their entities and emphasize in their business or operational plans. A merit-based selection system is something we not only see in Michigan municipalities, such as Hazel Park, Lansing, Niles, Warren, Flint, Lapeer, etc., but it's also something we see in municipalities in other states with well-established marijuana legislation, such as Pennsylvania, North Dakota, Ohio, Colorado, and California. Why allow chance to dictate the ethical business practices, quality, character, and morale of the entity that will operate within your jurisdiction when it's not necessary to go down the route of rolling the dice? Selecting an applicant at random by way of lottery system leaves licensure up to chance and does not mandate or necessitate that the most qualified applicants will be selected as operators, while choosing a first-come, first-served selection system prioritizes timeliness over quality, character, and morale. With a merit-based system, every entity at least gets the chance to be considered and to prove why they would be the best licensee to operate within your jurisdiction, and that they have acquired as well as sustained the wherewithal to run a successful and ethical business. The patients of this community deserve to have first-class medical marijuana facilities ran by operators who are tried and true. A merit-based selection system is the way to deliver this. Thank you.
Next.
Sure.
Can I have your name again? Your name.
Oh, Kristen Tenza.
Kristen.
And your address for the record too, please?
Oh, it's 39 Barrow Street, Metamora, Michigan.
Thank you.
You tell me when the clock starts.
When you start talking,
Great.
name and address, please.
Great. Hello, Alma City Commission. I am Ron Shirley, and I temporarily live at my summer home in Wademan on Coldwater Lake, 1331 North High Slope Street. I will move to Alma and buy a home for my residents when Alma passes the medical marijuana laws. I am the owner of Extreme Auto, a used car and truck dealership with an Alma address. I also am a first responder for FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, and here's my federal badge, so you know I've got FBI clearance. I have been a St. Louis resident and business owner for most of my 71 years. After graduating from St. Louis High School and then a 4-year degree at Northwood University, I went into the Navy and was stationed in San Diego, California. After my Navy commitment, I moved back to St. Louis, purchased a furniture store for my parents, went into the real estate business, and had multiple rental properties in Gratiot County. Many of those rental properties were here in the city of Alma. My wife and I raised our 2 children in St. Louis, and my dad, Larry, was mayor of St. Louis for many, many years. Thanks to the chemical PBB, my family and I are filled with it. I am here tonight to encourage you to pass the rules for medical marijuana businesses, even though at this time I have no financial gain from a marijuana business in Elma. I am here tonight to support my friends Zach, Mike and Amy, Lenny and Beth, great people who do want to have a medical marijuana business here in Elma. At the last Elma City meeting, there were 10 people who spoke against medical marijuana and not one of them stated any facts. I want to give you some of those facts that I have researched. I have over 50 years of experience and knowledge of marijuana. And that binder right there is documentation that I've been accumulating for over 20 years. The first I ever heard of marijuana was when I was in San Diego and in the Navy. I used it then as a fun and non-violence causing substance. It was alcohol that caused all the problems and disasters for me and my other Navy friends. I started using marijuana again when a drunk driver in 1993 hit me head-on in an auto crash on M46 just west of the then Elma Big Boy. I received from that head-on crash a severe brain injury and a crushed body. Marijuana today relieves the pressure in my head and my body pain. I am opiate drug-free thanks to marijuana. My mom, Kay, died at the age of 91, and I never saw her take illegal drugs or use alcohol. During the last months of her life, because of the incredible pain she was in, she was constantly drugged up on heavy prescription painkillers. She had no quality of life and agreed to use marijuana oil in capsules that she ingested. Because of the marijuana oil, my mom had little pain and was able to die peacefully. For many years, I have dedicated my time to finding homeless and needy veterans. One of the first things I do is get these veterans off the multiple prescription drugs the VA puts them on. Here is a front page newspaper article from the Gaylord newspaper on one of those veterans, 88-year-old Glenn. Some of you may have negative opinions about, many of you on the Elma Council may have a positive opinion of medical marijuana, but like me, you are afraid to come out of the closet to give your support as you think people will judge you. Tonight, I have come out of the closet to tell you about my experience with marijuana. Some of you may have negative opinions about marijuana, and I would guess most of your opinions are based on lack of knowledge. People I know who are against marijuana base their feelings on what they learned from Cheech and Chong movies, funny stuff. I recently watched a couple of movies on TV that were funny, Jack Black and Chevy Chase movies, and there were several funny jokes and scenes dealing with marijuana. People I know who use medical marijuana are not drug addicts, any more than a person who drinks a beer is an alcoholic. I recently took my wife Suzanne to the Midland Center for the Arts and saw the play The Jersey Boys. It's the story of Frankie Valli. The F word was used over 30 times in that play and no one seemed offended. Do you remember? In the past, when it was rare to hear the F word, it's just a way of life today, just like liquor sales on Sundays and alcohol sales at college sporting events. Do you remember 10 years ago when you learned when someone said they were gay and you were taken back? Times change. How do you feel about today in gay people? Elma City Commission, how the Elma voters feel about medical marijuana has changed. For over 15 years, I've been keeping documentation on marijuana. This past Sunday on the TV show 60 Minutes, they did an investigation on the price of prescription drugs. It confirmed that medical doctors make money from the drug companies to prescribe drugs to their patients. My MD, Dr. Bouvier from Grand Blanc, has me come down to his Grand Blanc office on a regular basis to talk to his patients who are going through chemotherapy. Support grows for medical marijuana. Survey shows 80%, 8 out of 10 of older Americans approve of the drug for treatments. Michigan State University.
Hey, Mr. Shirley, I think your 5 minutes are about up, so if you could just wrap it up, please.
Yep.
I'm sorry, but I think there's a lot of people that like to talk.
Either hold your hand up or cough. Okay? So the point being, and I'll leave the podium, is take a look, okay? Take a look at the positive aspects of medical marijuana. And if I had time tonight, I would give you documentation that shows here in the state of Michigan, the study shows currently 61% of the voters approve of medical marijuana. And anytime you want to get through this thing, just give me a call. As long as you're buying lunch, I'll bring it down, okay?
Hey, thank you. And who would like to be next? Next up, please come to the podium, state your name and address.
And Brian Grant, 1148 North Fallen Park. I work for Youth for Christ, I'm a campsite director. I work with alternative ed high school students. I know that there's really a need for medical marijuana. I work with a girl who benefits from it. She's it's without a doubt that it helps her. I also work with a lot of kids that abuse it very badly. We've had a banquet about a month and a half ago. The kid shared in front of about 300 people his story. And it started with marijuana, which led into cocaine, which led into mouth. Horrible things, horrible addiction. Thankfully, he's not taking any of that today. About 2 months ago, driving a kid home, he shared with me, Ryan, I can't wait until the end of May. I turn 16. I said, cool, I'm thinking driver's license. I get my medical marijuana card when I turn 16. My parents can sign off on it. The kid has absolutely no medical need for marijuana at all. Your state of how many medical card holders there are, it's a flawed system. I know too many kids who go and pay a certain amount of money, they get their card, and now they feel like they're good. I feel as if we as a city bring this into our town, we're saying it's okay.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Ray Rutkowski. I live in St. Louis, Michigan. Earlier today, I had an opportunity of passing along a few things that I shared with the board here. Just wanted to go through just a few of them. Basically, what I've given you here is a little bit of a history behind how marijuana got to where it is today. And a lot of that is based on fear and some concerns mixed up with what I will say kind of the state of affairs of the country when marijuana became an issue. Heroin was also an issue, opium was also an issue, all at the same time. And marijuana got rolled into all of that. Over the next several years thereafter, there have been several studies done asking the government to look at different opportunities where they've been able to study and review marijuana usage and the detriment or the benefit thereafter. Shortly after the Harrison Act in 1914, there was a group down in Panama that actually looked at several soldiers who were using marijuana, and again, at the end of their review of several years of marijuana use, they basically came out and said there's not really a whole lot that they can see that demonstrates a major problem with marijuana. Further on, in 1937, the Marijuana Tax Act was enacted by, at that point, the Bureau of Narcotics head, Harry Anslinger. And at that time, he was opposed by a doctor, actually the legal counsel of the AMA, and even though he was opposed by the AMA, the law went through to allow for taxing of marijuana, and basically it was a taxing of doctors, pharmacists, and manufacturers, etc., for again limiting the use of marijuana at that time. But again, this the director or the legal counsel of AMA was interested in negating that. Further on in 1938 to 1944, there was a commission, the LaGuardia Committee, put together a study of over 16,000 individual criminals that potentially could have or did not use marijuana, And what they found is out of those 16,000 individuals that there really was no greater evidence of increased violence, insanity, juvenile delinquency, addiction, or leading to other addictive drugs. Despite these findings, opponents of marijuana wrote off the study as unscientific. In 1952, there was a Boggs Act that came out with mandatory sentencing of drug use. Again, marijuana was kind of thrown into that whole thing. Further yet, in 1969, there was a case that overthrew the Marijuana Act, and that because it was a violation of the Fifth Amendment right at that time. Going further yet, Nixon in 1970 created the 5-tier, what we would know as the schedules of drugs. Today, marijuana was classified as a Schedule I, which means that there basically is no medicinal value to it. Schedule II would be things like oxycodone or OxyContin, morphine, cocaine, Norco. These are all names that we are well known today. Marijuana, heroin, meth, and LSD would be considered in the Schedule I. So Nixon himself wasn't 100% certain that that's where marijuana should go, so he brought on a governor, Governor Schaefer. He had a commission to basically find out how detrimental marijuana is to the society. From 71 to 72, Schaefer evaluated several different things. His evidence showed...
Excuse me, Ray, but unfortunately your 5 minutes are about up, so
Okay.
could you give us your
Yep,
final thought,
yep.
please?
Again, one of the main reasons that I'm giving all of this information is just as a backdrop of how did marijuana get to this point today. I guess it's legal in certain areas. I'm just wanting you to understand a little bit on the backdrop as to how we got to today. I am a pharmacist. I own a shop here in Elma. If there was an opportunity or the ability for me to open a dispensary, I would do so. Unfortunately, I cannot do that out of my own facility. I would have to open a separate facility. I did want one last thing. I did give you a study, or a comment on CBD oil. It has been thought to be a legal entity in all 50 states.
Illegal or illegal?
Illegal. And as of the 2nd of this month, there was a reevaluation of the term that the terms that the DEA came up with. And as of right now, even CBD oil is considered a Schedule I item. So we have places in our community that sell that today. And as of the 2nd, at least in my understanding, CBD oil is considered a Schedule I. And that, a CBD oil has to have less than 0.3% THC, which is the hallucinogenic product.
And you did, I believe, provide us with a...
Yeah, everybody has that. Feel free to, send me any questions or what have you. But thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, I guess if we'll just continue then. So who would like to be next? Please come to the podium, state your name and address.
My name is Lori Wilson. I live in St. Louis. I was a long time resident of St. Louis. I live at 517 Michigan Avenue. I agree with Mr. Sharley that if you pass the ordinance of legal marijuana, you're going to take the chance of having people take advantage of it. I think that cancer patients and people who are really sick with medical illnesses should be the only ones with it. Because if you let anyone get this, and somebody's driving down the road and they have it in their car, they're going to hurt themselves, they're going to hurt somebody else's family members, or they're going to hurt a pedestrian. My opinion, I don't think it should be in Gratiot County. I don't care if it's St. Louis, Alma, Breckenridge, or Ithaca. And like I said, I'm a longtime resident of St. Louis, and I don't think it should be in Gratiot County anywhere, because if you pass it, you're going to let anyone take advantage of it. And one of these times, if somebody gets behind the wheel and they have this, their brain is not going to be working right because they're going to be messed up here, and they don't know what they're going to be doing when they get behind the wheel. And I think, my opinion, I think the answer should be no. Thank you.
Okay, who would like to be next to address the commission?
My name is Barbara Manton. My address is 526 Front Street, Alma. I am standing here tonight uncomfortable speaking in public, but feel strongly about this topic. So please look past my nerves and listen to my message. I support the proposed city ordinance under the state's Medical Marijuana Facilities Act that would allow local Legionnaire licensors to growers, processors, transporters, compliance centers, and provisioning centers, also known as dispensaries. I stand here as one voice, but I represent many more citizens of this community. Unfortunately, they are simply too scared to come forward. You have asked, actually begged, for community members to come to meetings and speak up. And although everyone I have talked to about this ordinance has supported the regulation it provides, the opportunity it represents for businesses, as well as the access to local medicine for Gratiot County cardholders, they fear if they show up to these meetings, they will be labeled or profiled within the community. Business owners have indicated to me that they are worried that they would lose customers simply because they support this ordinance and its efforts to provide better regulation to the medical marijuana industry, an industry that has been legal in this state since 2008. Each of you earned your spot on the city commission through the support of citizens of Alma. What have you done to talk to your constituents one-on-one regarding this issue? If they won't come to you, have you gone to them? We see politicians walk in the parades, shaking hands and kissing babies. I bet we'll see some of you and many others in the weeks during the Highland Festival Parade. Wait a minute. Shaking hands during the weeks of the Highland Festival Parade, since it's election year for some. But if you truly think you still don't have enough information yet to vote on this issue, then have you invested time to read and learn about the state law that was revised in 2016? And it took nearly 6 months ago in December. I screwed up here. Do you have any understanding of the rigors of the state process? The proposed ordinance under consideration is well developed and requires high standards. The individuals involved in this drafting clearly have invested appropriate time. Now it's your turn to act. Please vote yes on this ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, who would like to be next?
I am Jeff England. I live at 216 West Center Drive here in Alma. I am a resident. I am a parent, a dad of a student in the middle school. And I also am a pastor here in this city of Alma. Just because marijuana is here does not mean that we can accept it. Due to confidentiality, I cannot share, but I've had many families sitting in my office crying at the effects that marijuana and drugs has had on their family. I ask that the commission think long and hard at the effects that this is going to have, not just here now, but the long impact it's going to have on generations to come. To a young teen, hearing that marijuana, the medical marijuana is acceptable, from their perspective, as Ryan mentioned earlier, is an open door for them. Please think deeply that it's not just the economic impact that this will have positive on this city, but as well as the moral impact it's going to have for generations to come. Please think about your grandchildren, your great-grandchildren, if this is passed. Please, I ask that you would vote no on this ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Dawn Daniels. I live at 116 Elwell Street here in Alma. I've been a resident here since April of 2000. I also am a minister, so I'm going to speak from various roles, but I'll make this very quick. Because I'm going to assume, I have to assume, that you as the elected body of this city have already educated yourselves quite well about this ordinance. I've read through the ordinance, all 21 pages. I do want to suggest that when you do post those kind of drafts online, please number the pages for people when you want to reference things, but I don't have any problems with the ordinance. In fact, I stand here in support of the ordinance. And, but also in my role, my previous role in life as a chemical dependency substance abuse counselor for years with the United States Navy. Please don't give in to, please don't bow to, I'm going to use the word ignorance, and I don't mean that in any sense of stupidity or inability to learn, but there is some ignorance in this community about the chemical dependency aspects of marijuana, and also about availability, because it's a false argument to worry about you certifying a medical facility, a dispensary, which allows people in desperate need of medically prescribed services of marijuana to be used. We already do that for a number of other narcotics and substances in this world. People's medicine cabinets at home, if they're worried about their children having marijuana, they need to be worrying also about their medicine cabinets at home, because we have a far greater opioid addiction problem in this country. So I don't want to talk a whole lot about that, other than to say, I just want very much to support, give my voice to support this argument, or this proposal for this dispensary, but just to encourage you not to give into fear and misinformation that a lot of people still possess about marijuana. Whether you do this dispensary or not, youth in this community will find marijuana, just as they can get their hands on alcohol, just as they can get their hands on other substances. Do not allow that fear to stop you from certifying a much-needed medical service in this community. I do wish, the pharmacist spoke before, I do wish it could be regulated through that system. I'm not knowledgeable enough to know why that's not happening. This is the way we have to do it under our current state laws. Please allow it to happen. Please make it happen in this community. Thank you.
Thank you, Don. Okay, who would like to be next? It's open mic night, folks.
Afraid to do this, but
We won't bite, you promise.
my name is Doug Freed. I live at 515 North Fort Avenue. I walk here. It's great. I just moved to Alma recently, actually. I moved into my apartment on St. Patrick's Day. Lots of fun. So I've actually formed this comment today, listening from the comments of everybody else here tonight. This is not pre-written or planned or anything, and I'm very nervous, so give me a moment here. A lot of people have come up here tonight to talk about, the effects on children. The thing is that, as the last lady who came up here just said, if they can get their medical marijuana card, whether you choose to pass this ordinance or not, so they can still get marijuana. It was posted, I remember the number earlier, there was over 170 caregivers in Gratiot County alone. Gratiot County is about 576 square miles, so that's about 1 every 4 square miles of Gratiot County. So if we don't have commercial entities within the city of Alma, there's 170 people in Gratiot County alone that these children can go to get marijuana if their parents sign off on their medical marijuana card. And I think that is the more important issue here, is that we need to focus in our communities on parenting and teaching our children about the responsible use of medication, in particular medical marijuana, and that the fact that, you know, a 16-year-old kid can get his medical marijuana card should not stop us from regulating commercial dispensaries within the city of Alma. I'm sorry, my mind is a little screwed up right now. I'm trying to put things together here. And I think that this ordinance will actually help with the teenager aspect of it, because now they will, to get medical marijuana, they have to come into a business within the city of Alma to get it, and it will be brought into the forefront. And you know, as the ordinance actually already says, that no one under the age of 18 may enter a dispensary without their legal guardian. And so, you know, their parent has to be there with them to buy medical marijuana. So it is the parent already signing off on this happening, and we should focus on that, you know, as our pastors, as our community leaders, focusing on teaching our parents to teach our children about proper appropriate use of medication, including medical marijuana. You know, because it's already here. You can't block it entirely, but you can regulate it. You can bring it into the front so that you can inspect these facilities. You can see, you know, they're following all of the regulations, that they're doing everything that they're supposed to do, rather than the 170 caregivers that are growing medical marijuana in their basement. And as stated, you can't inspect them until you've got probable cause that they're already doing criminal activity, and at that point it's too late. You know, at the point you've got probable cause, it's reasonably likely that they are doing something wrong. So, and at that point it's too late. If you have commercial entities that you can inspect them with or without notice, you know, you can proactively ensure that they are keeping up with their regulatory responsibilities. I've totally lost my train of thought, but I think that's about all I want to say. But yes, I will say that I am definitely in support of this ordinance. I have had personal friends who use marijuana medicinally. One person who uses it for ADD, and another person who uses it for a seizure disorder, and it has been very, very helpful to both of them. And having commercial dispensaries where they can go and get it has been so helpful to them. Besides having to, you know, try to find a caregiver that can sell to them, or purchasing it off the streets from a drug dealer, you know, being able to walk into a licensed commercial facility and purchase it has been so helpful to them. And so I definitely think that this ordinance would be very helpful to the city of Alma, and we need to address the problem of teenagers with the parents, with the teenagers in the community, and not by voting no on this ordinance.
Thank you. Okay, who would like to be next?
Hi, my name is Hillary Shantz. I am a family doctor in Ithaca. I live at 206 West Center Street. I work just 2 blocks from there. I don't envy the decision that you're making. I feel like this is really hard. I have heard things that everyone has said, and I agree with something that has come out of everyone's mouth. So that makes it kind of hard to take a position. I think I'll just say what I'm thinking. I agree with regulation. I certainly don't like that my patients are buying marijuana out of people's basements. On the other hand, at least half of my patients that have their medical card have no evidence-based disease for which marijuana is helpful. And they are using it as a substance, just like I use a beer to relax when I go home, and not any differently, with no proof that it helps, and I don't drink beer pregnant, let me clarify that. But, you know, there is no evidence that proves the treatment they're on is beneficiary. And, you know, there are 3 or 4 medical conditions for which there is at least some evidence that is helpful. But most of the conditions I've heard mentioned tonight are actually not on that list. There is not randomized controlled trials, which is the medical standard for deciding if something is, you know, beneficial in a treatment, or whether it's placebo effect or some other effect that that person is experiencing. We also have the trouble with diagnosis not always being correct, especially with mental illness, ADHD, all kinds of things. The diagnosis has come to improperly lots of the time. So where do my patients get their medical cards? If they see me and they tell me they have one and they're smoking marijuana, I have to write that down. They're not seeing me. So it's splitting up that's not under your control, whether people get their card or how they get their card or those rules. I realize that's not the debate on the table tonight, but that's the hard thing for me as a physician. That it's out of my control, even though these patients continue to choose to come to see me. It's out of my control, really, that they've chosen a last line therapy first before they've come to me with a problem that has probably at least a dozen other possible treatments prior to seeking marijuana. For seizures, in the study they did that showed it was helpful in children with severe epilepsy, those kids tried at least 12 anti-epileptics and were still having 40 to 50 seizures per day. Show me a person like that in Gratiot County who's taking marijuana for seizures. I'll tell you there aren't. That's not why people are taking it. And I support the people. Just like my patients on opioids, I've got a handful of patients that really need them. And I try to monitor them very carefully so that neither of us gets in trouble and they can continue to have the drug they need. Unfortunately, I haven't been given the privilege of doing that with marijuana. I don't get to help strongly regulate who is getting the card in the first place. I'm sure everyone who's spoken tonight really needs the card that they have, but that is not my patient population. That is not who I am treating and seeing in the office every day that walks in with a card and wants easier access to marijuana. For medical treatment, I get that. So ideally, would it be great if people who need it for medical treatment that is evidence-based and really helpful, would it be great if they could get that from a regulated place here in Alma and you guys could benefit from the taxes? Sure, I think that would be great. But I think we know there's a lot more people in this county with cards than should have cards because they haven't been truly vetted by a physician who knows what they're doing and who knows what the indications for marijuana are, regardless of the law, looking at the medical evidence for whether or not that's a treatable condition. And teenagers, just quickly, they are particularly at risk for the adverse effects associated